Hey everybody, and welcome back. I am Dr. Butler, the MD Investor, and this is episode 3 of the MD Investor podcast. And today we're going to be talking about why doctors are having challenges when it comes to retirement. So a lot of doctors, as you know, maybe you guys have come across doctors like this in their field. They can be in their 50s or 60s or so, and they still work as much as when they were younger. Some doctors do who have private practices start to scale back or try to get more out of the hospital setting and more into the office setting. But the cycle seems to be very similar. A lot of doctors still have this same issue when it comes to retiring. Why is retiring as a physician so challenging? We work in a field where, as a career, we're in the top 5% of the US in terms of careers, in terms of income. We're in the top 1% when it actually comes to a regular based income salary compared to general America. And on top of that, when we go to retire, a lot of doctors still have assets, less than $1 million in assets. And if that's the set standard for wealth in America, which a lot of times it is, in this case, we don't have a lot of wealth. Only 7% of physicians seem to have over $5 million worth of assets when they go to retire. But that's only 7%. And there's a lot more physicians out there in the world who are on the other end of that spectrum, who go to retire and their retirement is solely based on whatever they put into their 401k or their IRAs, or they're hoping that their investments that they placed in time before are going to be beneficial. And a lot of times that kind of sucks. I know a lot of physicians who are retired. I know a lot of physicians who are elderly who still work, doctors well into their 60s, well into their 70s, who still have to work, who don't actually continue to work because they're bored or they want to, but have to. And that's kind of heartbreaking for me because as physicians, we're people who serve the community. We're people who serve the general health of the population. I don't want to sound like a hero complex or anything of that nature, but we chose a field where we wanted to help people more than anything else. Now, some of us might have done it for prestige or namesake, or some of us might have wanted just the title, and some of us want money. No matter what it is, no matter what category you fall into, as a physician, the training is there. The time that you have to put in, the 10 plus years of graduate training, the 14 plus years of graduate training that you put in to do this leads to you having a specialized field. And when you're in that specialized field, that means that there's a limitation to what you're bringing in. That means that you're obligated to do this to make up for the time that you wasted in your youth. So what I mean, for example, is let's say you're a high school student, or you're someone who just graduated high school or just finished college. Your life starts then and there. But for a physician, you have to keep training. You have to go to medical school after that. And after that, you have to go to your residency training. And if you're specialized, you have to go into your fellowship or your specialty training. So that means that you're putting years and years and years to track into training and to honing your skills and crafting your skills, which means that in terms of getting your retirement started, you're already behind the ball. And then behind the ball on top of that, you're in debt. So you start off possibly in debt, possibly behind all of your peers who are not physicians. And then on top of that, you have to still have a lifestyle, have your life in terms of like your family, your house, your cars, whatever it may be. And all of a sudden, it takes you longer and longer to retire. See, I never wanted to be in that boat. And when I realized that as a new attending, I was like, this is not going to be for me. I can't slave away for 40 or 50 years and still have nothing to show for it, which is why I am the MD Investor, because I put all of my salary into investing, like maybe 90%, 95% of my salary. And I had to make sure that I had a solid income, other streams of income to make sure that I'm covered in terms of retirement, in terms of everything. I wanted to make sure that I was solid, secure. And not only that, I don't want to retire at 65. I want to retire now. I want to be financially free to do whatever I want in life and control my whole situation today. I don't want it to be something that I get 50 years from now that someone hands to me. I want to take control of it. And some of the issues that I notice is that with physicians, even statistically, a lot of physicians have problems when it comes to retiring. So the National Library of Medicine, the NIH, as you guys know, because we use these scholarly articles all the time, they state that they've done a lot of studies on physicians who are retiring, and a lot of them are struggling. The average retirement age is usually around 60 to 65. I guess that's on par with America, but at the same time, why is it that we're retiring with less wealth than the majority of Americans who are in the same class, who've worked the same amount of time? And the reason seems to be because one is we still have issues in terms of how to invest, when to invest, and why we're investing so late. And some of the reasons is because of our training. If you're putting an extra 14 years on top of your training or an extra 10 years on top of your training, you're 10 years behind. And compound interest is something that works fantastically for you when you're in early. So if you were to buy Tesla stock back when it was $189, then fantastic. That compound interest would have you set to where you need to be, because Tesla's what, at $775 or something in that ballpark? So again, imagine that your life is just like a Tesla stock. At this point in time, it's costing you so much just to put away and just to invest in yourself currently that putting away for your future becomes more and more difficult. And this is something that breaks my heart, because as a physician myself, I know what it's like. Some of us work anywhere from 15 to 20 shifts a month. I don't do that anymore, but I used to when I started. There was times where I've worked even up to 24 shifts in a month. I worked the entire month and I was still financially in disrepair, if you will. But in this case, I started changing my mindset and fixing everything to where I can actually make sure that my retirement, my future, and everything is secure, because I want things to be done right and I want them to be done now. So in this case, in order to do that, there's two separate mindsets that I like to think about. One of those mindsets is kind of like delayed gratification, which we talked about last episode, where a lot of doctors kind of struggle with that idea of delayed gratification. Like, do you want something now or do you want something to be fruitful later? And in my case, it's kind of a mixed bag, because I have a delayed gratification in terms of wanting my investments to work, but I want them to work now. And what I mean by that is I want cash flow. A lot of people think that investing for 20 and 30 years is also the goal. That's a long-term goal for a generational plan, which means I'll invest for 20 or 30 years so that my children and their children and their children have funds. But that doesn't help me today. Me buying Tesla and holding it for 20 years doesn't fix my financial needs today, which means that I also need cash flow. I need cash flow today. And in that case, that cash flow is going to be what pays me now, what fixes it to where I don't have to go and do 15 or 20 shifts a month. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work that hard, and I don't want to be that busy. I do like medicine and I do like being in the hospital, but I want it to be something that I get to truly enjoy and practice, and that's not forced upon me. So some of you might work in offices where you're obligated to see 20 plus patients a day. Some of you are hospitalists like myself, and you're obligated to see 20 plus patients a day, plus admissions, plus discharges, plus social worker rounds, and it just gets to be hectic. I don't want to deal with that every single day and feel like I'm forced to ask for vacation or forced to ask for time off. And this is also what bothers me, because a lot of doctors feel like even though they're young, they want to retire. So there's a lot of new attendings and new doctors who are considered millennials, and they want to retire already. And I fall into that category as well, because even though I'm quite young and I'm only in my 30s, I don't want to be working as a physician for the next 30 years and retire when I'm 65 and then think, I wasted my life, or this was difficult, or did I put a dent in the world, or did I leave my mark? I want to create a legacy, something I can pass down for my future. And in this case, I really hope that a lot of other people want to do the same thing, because we have that same kind of approach. And what I mean by that approach is that we feel like maybe we're called to do this for some reason, whether it's, your family pushed you into it, it's something you've always wanted since you were a child, or if it's a calling. Being a doctor is kind of like a calling. Like, some people want to be police officers, some people want to be firefighters, some people want to be nurses. It's like whatever it is that made you drawn to medicine. In this case, it shouldn't be a double-edged sword. Like, you shouldn't be drawn to that field and then also tortured by that same field. You should enjoy life. You should be like, hey, I'm a doctor and I'm proud to be a doctor. I enjoy what I do. But you know what? By the same time is I enjoy teaching. I enjoy helping. I want to help others and I want others to be able to build in this space. But at the same time, I want to make sure that my retirement is secure. I want to make sure that my life is secure. And in this case, I am less of a fan of the word retirement and more of a fan of the idea of being able to control my life and control my financial outcome. And the way I do that is, again, I myself, as the MD investor, I believe in cash flow. So in this case, let's say I buy real estate. If I'm buying real estate and I have multiple apartment complexes and that money coming in from real estate covers my living expenses, then now I don't have to really worry about being retired. I know that whether I work or not, whether I show up to the hospital or not, my expenses will always be paid. And in this case, I do that with multiple streams of income. So with multiple streams of income, I want to make sure that whatever I'm investing in is covering my costs. I love nice cars, and we talked about cars before, and a lot of doctors have a weak spot for cars. So some people are like, I want that Tesla, I want that Porsche, I want that Mercedes. I want those things too. And at the same time, I have those things, but I want to make sure something is covering that cost. So if something is covering the cost of that car, if I have rentals that cover that cost, if I have real estate that covers that cost, or if I have e-commerce that covers that cost, then that's perfect, because in this case, they will never become liabilities to me, and I'm not obligated to work to cover that. A lot of people are afraid that if they stop working, they can't afford either their debt or their lifestyle. And if that's the case, then you're living beyond your means, which makes your retirement even more difficult. And I want you to have an easier retirement, not a more difficult one. And retirement itself is a huge, huge topic to try to digest. But in this case, we're just going to dibble and dabble in the superficial of it, and then we can get deeper into it, because that's what the podcast is about. It's just bringing up subjects that we can talk about and getting the ideas flowing. So like, what plants that seed in your mind that goes, you know what? I need to get started in this. Or, you know what? I need to be able to do this. That's all I want to do, is get the juices flowing so you can understand that this is what you're here for. You're here to help people, but just because you're here to help people, just because you're here as a calling, it doesn't mean that your only purpose is to struggle for someone else's struggle. You can't trade a life for a life, which Eric Thomas always says. You have to be able to provide more and more for you, for yourself, for your futures. And it has to be sustainable. If you love what you're doing and you're not being burnt out, you'll work better, you'll work longer, and you'll enjoy the process. It'll be something you enjoy. Like when I go to the hospital, I enjoy that time because I don't have to always do it. Now I mostly do locums, and when I do that, I only take maybe 5 shifts a month at max, probably. So when I do that, it's like, okay, I took these 5 shifts, that money comes in, I use that to buy more property, or I use it to buy more stocks, or I use it to invest in whatever I like, because in this case, I don't need it to survive. It is not money that I need to survive. It is money that I use to thrive. So if I want to take my family on a vacation, I can. And I don't have to ask for permission. Why? Because I'm an independent contractor. No one tells me what I have to do except for when I'm on the clock. So when I'm on the clock, great. I'll show up to all the social worker meetings. I'll do everything I can. But then once I'm off the clock, I'm free. It's me. I take care of my family. I get to go on vacations. I do what I want because, again, I have that control. So now I don't have to worry about my retirement. I have my own IRA account. I don't need a 401k that's controlled by another company or promised to someone. Like a lot of doctors get stuck in that. They'll say, "Oh, I have a 401k. I'm obligated to stay at this company that I hate because of my 401k." That's nonsense. A 401k is just another vehicle for you to try to build wealth. But in this case, they were originally started not for people to retire on, but when they were first created by Theodore Roosevelt, I don't know how long ago, however old he is, when they were first done, they were done in order to compensate for people who can no longer keep up with working. So if you had a warehouse and 30 of those people were strong, able-bodied men, and then 2 of them were obligated to not work anymore because they couldn't, everyone pitched in. And then the 2 people who couldn't work were covered by the other 28 people. And then 2 new people would come in. And now everyone's contributing. So now that was what the 401k premise was. Is just that extra money that's being contributed is just in case for any reason you couldn't work anymore. You got too old to keep doing that job. You were okay. We'd be able to take care of you. But now with how our society is set up, That's not a very good model for retirement, because you're actually depending on someone else to try to contribute to what you need for the future instead of doing it yourself. So when they take that fund, what they're doing is they're taking your money and then they're putting it in the same vehicle that you have access to, the stock market or wealth building or into insurance. And then you're only getting a small percentage of that. Usually it's about 10 to 12%. So imagine if I told you, hey, why don't you give me $1,000 and every single year I will give you 10 to 12% more. So you're only making $100 for every $1,000 that you put in. So if you have 100,000, you're like, okay, hey, I'm making $10,000 a year. That sounds fantastic until you realize that 90% of the wealth that you're gaining is going to someone else. Because if they gain 10%, then the other 90% is going somewhere. And that could be done from stock trading. It could be used from holding stocks. So if they're matching the market and the market has a 20% yield to it and you're only promised 10%. But if the market is being traded, like let's say, for example, they're trading stocks or they're trading options or they're using their money to trade and do foreign exchanges, things like that. Now, all of the difference in that money is profit for them. This is why this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And so many people build their companies around this because it is a trillion-dollar industry. And a lot of people don't know what to do with money. They're scared of managing it themselves and they're scared of taking care of themselves. So they want someone else to do it. And because they want someone else to do it, they struggle. And physicians fall into this category because even though you have so much training and so much knowledge, you still don't understand money. And if you don't understand money, how could you build it? How could you grow it? How could you expand it? I don't know anyone who's had a 401k and is extremely wealthy. I don't see anyone who's like, hey, this 401k bought my yacht or this 401k paid for my mansion. It might pay for your monthly expenses and the retirement and you're hoping that it never runs out. But in this case, you don't have to worry about a retirement ever running out if your cash flow always exceeds your expenses. If you only live on, let's say it costs you $5,000 a month to pay all your expenses, but your rental properties or your business or your investments are bringing you in $30,000 a month, then your retirement is whenever you say it is. If you don't want to go to work, you don't have to go to work. You're retired. And the reason is because your expenses are always going to be superseded or taken care of because of your cash flow. And that's how I operate. So in this case, I'm not obligated to go to the hospital because my cash flow always supersedes my expenses. So essentially, I can be retired today. I still like to practice medicine because I'm like, I spent all this time to get this degree. I might as well do something with it. Otherwise, I'd be bored. But for the most part, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy spending time with my kids. I enjoy making their birthday cakes and I enjoy doing things of that nature because I have the time to do it. And the only reason I have that time is because I believed in investing and I invested in my future and I invested in my knowledge. I poured tons and tons and hundreds of thousands of dollars into learning about investing and learning about the future. And even though that might sound silly to some people, I also spent the same amount to learn what it took to be a doctor. So it took hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt to accumulate to be able to have a degree. And that was an investment. I invested in myself to have a career that would help me to invest further in myself. So being a doctor is just one other step. Because in my head, being a doctor is another job. It's a job, it's a career. It doesn't matter what I do for a job. I just need income in order to be able to provide the best for my family. I happen to be very good at medicine, so that makes it easier because I enjoy it. I enjoy learning about the body. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy saving lives. That's what my purpose is. And I'm hoping that other people who find that same purpose realize that even though you're great at it, even though that's your purpose, you should still be able to enjoy life. You shouldn't have to beg to be able to spend time with your family or to go on vacation or to enjoy the things. Like doctors shouldn't have high depression rates and high suicide rates and terrible retirements. You should be able to be financially free. You should be able to enjoy your life. And I hope that you guys do get to enjoy your life. And I really hope that I'm able to help you learn how to make that process a reality. So in this case, I really want people to be able to overcome a lot of the challenges that come with retirement, because a lot of physicians struggle with, one, they struggle with planning for the future, and two is they're dependent. A lot of times most physicians are dependent on their career. They are under the impression that you can't get your own health care. And if you can't get your own health care, then where do you get health care from? Oh, this job provides you with health care. But in this case, I have my own business and my own company. I don't need a job, a W-2 salary, in order to get health care. I have fantastic health care. I actually pay less for health care than I did when I was an employee, and it's better health care. Why? Because everything is about structure and organization. And if it's organized properly and if structured properly, then retirement is not something that has to be this scary, terrible monster that people have to dread and think, oh, I have to live frugal for the next 30 years and I have to be poor for 30 years so that way I can have a decent retirement. Why? But by the time you're 70, you're too tired. So like, what if your health is failing by then? Like, you were like, I want to get that Porsche when I'm 70, when I can barely see what I'm supposed to be doing or how fast. You can't push the pedal to the metal when you're 75. You're exhausted. You're tired by that time. You might not be as energetic as you were when you were in your 20s and 30s. So you need to be able to enjoy life now because life is happening now. And if you're already at that age, then this probably doesn't pertain to you because you already might be retired or still in the process of trying to retire. Or you might be in the unlucky few where you're still working very hard at 65 and you're trying to find an exit strategy. And if that's the case, I wish I would have got to you sooner, because then I could have helped you to understand the importance of investing and the importance of building a future that's cash flow based, because cash flow ends up being king most of the times. So not just cash is king, cash flow. Because if you have cash and it's not doing anything, then it's kind of useless, because cash is just a tool that needs to be utilized to help you get what you need. So if you want time freedom, then cash can help you achieve that by setting up the proper investments. And if you want to create something else where wealth is built on that structure, you have to invest your money into something that's going to create that structure. So I really just hope that this helps to plant a seed in someone's mind so that you can start thinking, how do you want to build your cash flow? If your cash flow is going to be medicine, that's perfectly fine, but it takes more than one. Because for whatever reason, let's say you can't work as a doctor anymore. If you have a stroke or if you have a car accident or you can't work as a physician physically, now what? So in this case, if I couldn't work as a physician anymore, I'd have to still be able to make money. And I do. I have other ventures for that. I own a trucking company. I have an e-commerce. I do a lot of different things. So if I can't do medicine, I can always have another stream of income. And that's why multiple streams of income is so important to me, and why investing is so important, because true stability comes from investing in yourself and not from someone else helping you. Like, if a hospital is like, oh, don't worry about it, work for us for 30 years and we'll take care of your retirement. No, I would never trust someone with 30 years of my life so that they can actually give me something in return. I'd rather do it myself. And I'd rather bet on myself and bank on myself. And I hope I can convince a few people who are looking or who are on the fence about that to invest in themselves as well. Well, I guess that's enough rambling and ranting for me. I'm Dr. Butler, the MD Investor. And again, if you ever need help or you want to learn how to invest and you're looking for a mentor, or if you're looking for someone to teach you and walk you through the path, this is what I do for a living. Now, my podcast isn't here to sell you on that. It's just meant to bring light to people understanding what it's like being a doctor and what it's like making those transitions. And sometimes you need to hear it from someone who's one of your own. So in this case, I'm the MD Investor, and if you ever need help, go to themdinvestor.com. I had a great time, and I hope to see you guys next time.